Welcome to DIYeasycrafts and Berg knifemaking.com. Today we're going to take a look at making a shark-themed chef's knife. Now this is not one of my standard videos. In fact, on today's video, I'm not even going to touch steel, even though it's a knife-making video. We're going to start with how I come up with the outline or the design for my blade etchings. So I started with a picture. You could choose any sketch, any image that you find on the internet. This is a shark that I thought was positioned correctly, that would look good on the blade. And I outline it with a very thin magic marker, which I got down at the local arts and crafts supply. I think it was Michael's Arts. And you basically just want to outline it. This is where a good kindergarten education comes in handy. Kindergarten arts and crafts. And then once it's outlined, you just have to fill in any areas that are going to be dark or black. Think of the etching the whole time you're working on whatever image it is that you're working on. So the dark areas are the areas that are going to get etched. The light areas are going to be shiny. And this whole process really doesn't take very long. I had done several shark-themed knives over the years. I really just wanted to kind of increase or improve the image that I was going to have for this particular blade. It's also important to connect any of the real small areas, like the nostrils here, to another line of similar color. And any thin lines, you really have to thicken them up a little bit. I use a craft vinyl cutting machine called a Silhouette Cameo, and there are definitely restrictions to the size that it can cut out. So you'll have much more success if you can attach small areas to a larger area of the same color. The vinyl will cut out better, it'll hold together better on the blade during the etching process. So this is the shark. It's almost completely finished coloring it in. So what I did was I just took a picture of that, and I imported it right into the program that comes with the Silhouette Cameo. And one of the neat functions on the Silhouette is that it has a tracing option. So I can just position this, I can hit the little green box on the upper right, and I can trace that photograph, or the image in the photograph. I believe that the other vinyl cutting machines out there have a similar program. You know, I've never used the circuit, but I'm sure it can do the same type of process. So now that I've got the outline, I really just have to clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to ungroup this and break from path. And that allows each one of these segments to be individual. So if you notice throughout the outline, there are very small red spots. I can highlight those and just delete them. Those are all areas where the machine or the program saw light through my etching. I can also take areas that I think are too small, like the eye, and I didn't think would hold up, and make that larger. I can make lines a little bit thicker if I think that they are too small to hold up to the etching. It really is a pretty cool program. It gives you a lot of flexibility. And what I do with these is, once I get this shark image the way that I want it, I'll keep that then for future projects. So I'm almost building a library of images for my etching projects. But it does take a little bit of time. And when I'm all done, I'm happy with it. I group that so that when I grab it and move it around, I'm grabbing the entire object with all of its components and not just one component. I can then lay out the design of the blade. Now I'm going to be making a chef's knife. I have a bunch of these other sharks and other fish and coral, etc. in my library, and I can just position those where I want them on the blade, where I think they'll look good. And then I can send this off to print just by clicking a button in the upper right. But in today's video, really just going to look at the layout of this etching, and then we're going to move on to creating some really unique handles for this knife. And in part 2 of this series, I'll do the actual blade etching, and then I'll attach the handles to the blade and finish off the knife. So this is the art that I'm thinking of. Basically, every time I come back from work, I go up and I play around with it a little bit more. Maybe I add a little feature or improve a feature, but that's basically going to be the design of the blade etching. You got a tiger shark, a bull shark, a few Caribbean fish, and some coral. All right, so I wanted to have a set of really unique handles for this shark-themed knife. I recently made a shark-themed fixed blade knife and was very, very happy with the handles. I used Total Boat thick set resin. I'm going to do something very similar with these. I started with fossil shark teeth, which I found on Amazon. I've got my knife handle mold there, which I got from a company called Woodcraft online. There's a bunch of companies that have them. When I looked, they just had the best price. This Total Boat thick set resin, I mix 3 parts of the resin, 1 part of the hardener, and I mix it slowly for 5 minutes. What's really nice about this resin, it is very thin. So it gives any bubbles that are in the mix a lot of time to break free and make it to the surface on their own. Because it's so thin, you really don't need a pressure pot when working with this stuff. It does, however, take a little bit to cure. I usually leave my my resin in the mold for 4 or 5 days before I take them out. And you probably want to give it at least a week before you really start to work with it and you know, cut it and polish it or form it on a blade. Now, if you look real close, you can see some bubbles that have already reached the surface, but occasionally you'll find some that kind of grab onto whatever it is that you're casting. And you can just use a pin to break them free, get them to the surface. And then once they're on the surface, you can use a little butane lighter, little torch, and they'll just pop. Or you can drag them to the side, or you can pop them with a pin. Actually, you could leave them because you're probably going to grind down and polish. Now, when I was finishing that first set of scales, I had ordered some turquoise, also from Amazon, for another project. But I liked it so much, the color, that I thought I'd mix up another set of scales and add a little bit of turquoise in with the shark teeth, with the fossil shark teeth. So I just repeated the process. Poured the resin. Again, this is the Total Boat thick set resin. I let it sit for 4 or 5 days. Demolded it. Now my last set of shark tooth handles I had put on a black liner. I was very, very pleased with the way they came out. They really were a sharp looking handle. For this one, I had planned on putting it over some abalone shell. So these are the 2 sets that I ended up with. One is plain fossil shark teeth in a clear resin, and the other are the same type of fossil shark teeth with some additional turquoise stones added to the mix. This is the abalone shell that I was going to use almost as a liner, but it's not enough contrast and it's just too busy. So I think I'm going to go back to what I did last time, just with a black liner, or maybe I'll mix it up and go blue. The one with the turquoise I did with a black liner. This is how they came out. And I think that those will end up looking really nice on this particular chef's knife. So anyway, part 2, I'm going to etch the blade. I'm going to attach the handles to the blade and finish off the knife. Please stand by for that. I'd like to give you an invite to join us on our Facebook group, Knives and Knife Making. And if you're interested in making your own knives, check out the book that Jason Northgard and I put out a couple of years ago called Introduction to Knife Making. And that can be found on Amazon.com. Thank you very much.